Hi, this is Cassie, and welcome back to the Tomato Saga, episode 2. It's been 3 weeks since we planted our tomatoes. And I have a little bit of weeding to do. They've grown a lot, so let's go check them out.
This video has been interrupted by Mary to tell you Cassy so sassy is amazing.
So here are the tomatoes from the peppers perspective. Tomatoes have really grown since we put them in the ground. This one is the early girl. And she already has some starting to grow on her. These are our cherry tomatoes, and we place these up against the decking mostly because we'll utilize the decking for supporting them as well. I'm just carefully looking for snakes, so it's a fairly cool day, and we are likely not going to find any here in the shady garden. And over here I can see where one of my lower branches here already starting to show signs of we've got some critters crawling on it. I really want to get them from not touching the ground, so that they don't get early blight. I'm going to do a little pruning on these tomatoes. My dog is suddenly on alert. Oh, there's a bird. And I'm going to go down the back of the yard and get a stake for them because that big girl there is falling over. So it is time to stake him up. I think he grew a foot overnight. I swear he did. I've had these tomato cages for a really long time, and at the end of this season I'm going to treat myself to some new ones. They're starting to show their age a little. Of course, I want to encourage them to grow up. This cherry tomato is going to get big and bushy, and so I'm not too worried about it not having the bottom support on this one. All this growth, I'm feeling like I should have come out here much sooner. Bad farmer. So I've taken care of the weeding. I've done a little pruning towards the bottoms, and I've got them staked up. The pruning towards the bottom and the staking or caging, I guess I caged them. Caging or staking and the pruning towards the bottom, it serves a couple of purposes. One is that it encourages more growth at the top and more yield of product. Does this only work with tomatoes? I have no idea. I only like to grow tomatoes and peppers. I'm not a beginner gardener, just not a very good one. Also, it serves to keep the plant off the ground, which keeps it from getting early blight and later in the season late blight, where you will start to see the leaves deteriorating, maybe critters and disease being more able to get to them. Also makes them easier to harvest, because if you can encourage them to grow up and out from the top, you're going to be able to pick that fruit. And lastly, it gives them really good sun exposure. And I want to talk about an interesting tomato fact, of course. And it's the science behind the sun and the tomato and turning it red, getting it ripe. Now, granted, I do have 2 tomatoes in there that are going to probably be yellow, one maybe orange. I don't know, I'm excited to see. How do tomatoes turn red? Science, of course. The outside temperature for a tomato to properly ripen has to be between 50 degrees and 85 degrees Fahrenheit, and it has to be steady. That's why May, June, and July are great times in Kansas for tomatoes. The temperature rarely dips below 50 at night, and in the day we may flirt with 87, 88, but it's still a pretty good, it's just not that far from that sweet spot of 85 degrees that the tomato needs as a constant. Also, my tomatoes in the past, and I hope this year, have continued to produce for me into September, because I do have them in a spot. As you can see, it's 6:30 in the evening and we have shade. Now as the summer goes on and the days stretch out, it'll probably still be sunny back here at 6:30, but they have some blockage from the sun from a walnut tree and then the house later in the day. Maybe they don't overheat. That 50-85 degree temperature, it really kick-starts chemicals inside of those tomatoes that make them ripen. Those chemicals are called lycopene and carotene, and they work together, and once they are turned on, stay on, and that's how you get a red tomato. If they turn off, well, then you're eating fried green tomatoes. Sometimes happens later in the summer. Definitely happens early because I get impatient about tomatoes and I just start picking them. I don't know if you can see the plant behind me here. That tomato gets any bigger, it's getting sliced up and fried. Oh, also, tomatoes toot. Did you know that? They produce this gas called ethylene, and the ethylene kind of hovers around the tomato and helps encourage the growth. Now if it gets too hot or too windy, that ethylene can go away. That's why you see tips online, or you know, in the Farmer's Almanac, or maybe your grandma taught you, you put a kind of a semi-ripened tomato in a brown paper sack and let it sit for a day and it's ripe. That's because you pretty much are giving that tomato a Dutch oven and it's ripening in its own gases. It just keeps emitting that gas. That is the tomato update. As you can see, there's been a lot of growth and there's quite a few blossoms and already some tomatoes forming on the vine. The plant behind me, it had a head start. It was considered a big tomato plant at the farmer's market, and that's an indicator to me that I'm not going to have to wait long to have a tomato with some salt and pepper on it. It's not happening tonight. That's okay. My final tomato thought of the night is, do you think, in your opinion, that a tomato is a fruit or vegetable? Comment below. We're going to discuss that next time. It's quite a debate. Argue amongst yourselves. Thank you for watching episode 2 of the tomato saga. See you next time. Bye. No. No. Garrison. The little kids through the woods are playing and my dog is losing his mind. Doesn't he know I'm trying to vlog? That's the sound of me wishing I lived in the country.